That's good. As people are arriving, I think,
Morning.
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 Good morning. Good morning. Nice to see you.
Yes,
Good morning.
But she appeared only now, no?
I can't.
Well, everybody's only doing that.
Yeah.
Don't know how many there are.
Well, so we've got a good number arriving. I need to put my glasses on. I'm being vain and trying not to put them on, but I'll have to put them on to see who's here.
No worry.
They're on and off like a yo-yo. So, oh, it's super. We've got a really good number. Lovely to see everyone. So just waiting for, just to wait a minute or so just to let people arrive. And it's lovely, we've got a nice long session this morning, so we can enjoy and relax into it. How are we doing, Jason, with, are there more people in the waiting room?
Oh, we're good to go, I think.
Yeah, okay, let's do it then. And people can always join, obviously, afterwards. So, all right, okay. So good morning to everyone that's joined us this morning. I'm Jill, I'm one of the trustees of the Lamrim Buddhist Centre. So it's my privilege to welcome you this morning on behalf of Lamrim Buddhist Centre, Wales. It is wonderful that we are able to do these teachings now online while the centre has to remain closed, of course. But this seems like a real privilege to have the opportunity to have Geshe Graham with us, especially considering he's in France in the Nalanda Monastery, where he was last time we had a teaching from him. So I'm not going to say too much. You have the programme, I hope. So we schedule to run from now 9:30 through to 1 o'clock, but with a break, so that we can all have a refreshment or just have a break and reflection for half an hour. We are recording the session, so I hope people are comfortable with that. Obviously, it's your choice to turn your camera off if you'd rather not be seen and recorded. But I'm sure Geshe Graham would actually appreciate seeing people's faces, because I know when I'm presenting, it's so much nicer not to be looking at blank screens and to know that people out there and reacting and responding. So that is your choice, of course, but just to let you know that. I guess it's sensible, as with most Zoom meetings, to keep your microphones off most of the time, but this is a discussion opportunity, and Jason, who some of you might have met before, Jason Briggs is one of Geshe Graham's long-standing students, and I'm very grateful to Jason this morning, who is going to sort of manage the session, so he can direct you to invite questions, and you obviously turn your microphone off for those and interact, and of course there's always the chat facility to ask questions as well. But as I said, my understanding is it's very much an interactive session led by Geshe Graham, to whom we are very grateful. So I think that's adequate from me, and obviously if anything I've forgotten, Jason can pick up on that. So thank you so much again for being with us. It really is lovely to be able to do this in the absence of being able to be physically with you at the centre. So thank you, and thank you to Geshe Graham. Okay.
So good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Some places I know, some many that I don't. But welcome to everybody. Yes, I'm still in Nalanda, Nalanda Monastery, France. I have got this long-standing plan to come to Lamrim, Wales eventually, maybe next year, but we have to see whether conditions allow it or not. But thinking of you, and I don't know how many of you are speaking are actually closely connected to Lamrim, Wales or not, but some of you definitely are. Anyway, so that's something that could happen in the future. It's such a beautiful place. But in the meantime, I'm we gather together at a distance. So that should be possible. You know, our bodies are physically apart, but you know, minds are something different. Minds are something different from the body. So maybe we can have a kind of quite a close sharing in spite of the kilometers that separate us. So the plan for the first part, anyway, we'll do a bit of breathing meditation, and then you know, slight setting of motivation just quickly. And we want to chant this the song of the stages of the path. See, it's called, or one of the names of it, the song of the stages of the path. It's also known as, you know, the small lamrim, or the condensed meaning of the stages of the path. So one of Tsongkhapa's, or his longest versified presentation of the lamrim, and it is a song. So you know, it's not just a happy tune, but you know, it's something that is, I don't know whether designed to be chanted, but it's certainly suitable to be chanted. And yeah, sometimes it's a song of experience. So it's like, you know, it's not just a happy tune, but it's somebody trying to give, you know, their actual, you know, experience of the path, you know, their spiritual experiences, and give it a sort of a beautiful, eloquent, you know, shape in words. So that's what we're going to study. But first we chant it, right? And then we, you know, make a mandala offering and take refuge. So if you've got the various bits and pieces of stuff in front of you, then you can sort of participate. But we know online, or you know, that chanting doesn't really come together, because the people at a distance, you know, that inevitably they're a syllable behind. So you can't really expect to chant it. But there's two of us here in the room, so we're going to try and chant it. And one of them has got a very beautiful voice, not me. So between us, we hope to make it listenable, you know, so we just go through the whole thing first, like that, in this first session. And, you know, if we have another session in March, another session in April, you know, I'm not going to try and finish the whole thing today, but, you know, we can carry on like that next time. So then I'll do a bit of chit chat with whatever time we've got left until, say, about 11:15, because, you know, we do want the opportunity for people to ask questions. I won't have said very much by then, but questions are very welcome. But if you don't have any, that's also fine. And then for the last half hour or whatever, 25 minutes, we'll do a bit of meditation. Meditation on something, you know, simple like refuge, nothing too complicated at the beginning. So that's how we're going to go. So first of all, we want to chant. So I hope you can hear our voices clearly. Jason's not said anything about it. We've got a good microphone. Song of the stages of the path. Before the Shakya Lord I bow my head. Your form from hosts of perfect virtues born. Your speech fulfills the hopes of boundless beings. Your mind sees as they are all knowers. Maitreya and Manju Gosai bow to you. Our fearless teachers for most spiritual sense. The task of all the conquerors assumed. You emanate in play to countless realms. At Nagarjuna Sanga's feet I bow. As ornaments renowned throughout 3 worlds. You show just as it is the intention of the mother of the conqueror's heart to sound. Atisha, homage, treasurer who holds the full of flawless fit instructions for the path of the profound view and vast deeds, passed down well by the 2 great charioteers. I bow to you, my teachers, with respect. I symbol and the scriptures moved by love. With skillful deeds you show the fortunate the best approach which leads to liberty. Of
those honored ones crown ornaments, their fame a banner shining forth for beings. From Nagarjuna Sanghas down in line, this graded path to Buddhahood has passed. It yields our creatures' wishes without fail, a prized instruction like a powerful king, collecting myriad streams of splendid text, an ocean too of glorious eloquence. Now all his speech is contradiction-free, all scripture see as personal advice. The intention of the conqueror find with ease, safe from the chasm of the great mistake. So who with sense will not be captured by the three being created by supreme advice, adhered to by the many fortunate, the learned ones of India and Tibet, for certain to explain or hear but once this essence brief of scriptures all abuse, past benefit of teaching listening to true Dharma, contemplate its meaning then.
Correct and strong, reliance in thought and deed,
upon a spiritual guide who shows the path, no is the root cause well propitious for all excellence of this and future lives. The life may be the cause they lie him with, the offering of doing what he says. I too a yogi practiced in this way, you too who yearn for freedom do the same. Far finer than every fulfilling gem, this lifeless pleasure found not this one's, so hard to find, so lost the lightning flash. Reflecting in this fashion, realize well, for worldly deeds are but the minutia, so always sees its essence day and night. I too a yogi practiced in this way, you too who yearn for freedom do the same. Not sure that brings no bears in either realms, convinced that triple gem relieves that fear, they steadfast refuge precepts and transgress, and also it depends on distinct well, on actions black and white and their effects, then do or cast aside as should be done. I too a yogi practiced in this way, you for freedom do the same, from well and down to win the highest path, till that is found there's no progressing far, train in its cause is nothing incomplete, its vital feet are swelled with wrong stains, be cleansed not past of karmic hindrances, be always keen to use the full powers. I too a yogi practice in this way, you too who yearn for freedom do the same. Unless you strive to know true suffering's cause, no genuine growth or freedom grows into, or knowledge in samsara's cause or state. If not you one know how to cut its root, so then despair of renounce the world, all keen to know what binds you to the ground. I too a yogi practiced in this way, you too who yearn for freedom do the same. Abate in mind the great ways and the poles, support and base of mighty waves of deeds, elixir making both collections gold, a merit forth of countless virtuous minds. The hero conquered children, knowing this, make that most precious mind their inmost bond. I too a yogi practiced in this way, you too who yearn for freedom do the same. The wish fulfilling in ignorance souls, Find later cuts the knot of meanness through. This conversion can be the stars and blaze of dauntless courage for resounding fame. The wise ones knowing this the good path take of giving body, wealth, and virtues all. I too, a yogi, practice in this way. You too, who yearn for freedom, do the same. Its waters cleanse away misconduct stains. Its moonlight soothes afflictions, fever, pangs. Superb like Meru amidst a myriad beings, who all bow down to power and dawn. Morality, the noble, knowing this, adultic well is guarded like their eyes. I too, a yogi, practice in this way. You too, who yearn for freedom, do the same. Forbearance, best torment of the strong, the perfect means to bear affliction's sting. Garuda to the snake of hate opposed, strong armor against the weapon of harsh words. So knowing this, be trained and wait within the armor of forbearance unsurpassed. I too, a yogi, practice in this way. You too, who yearn for freedom, do the same. Attire resisted its diligence. Your insights and your scripture knowledge grow. Wax like the moon, you access purposeful. Whatever work succeeds as you intend. The conquered children knowing this cut off all laziness with force or diligence. I too, a yogi, practice in this way. You too, who yearn for freedom, do the same. The concentration soaring on the mind, when placed like Meru, never wavering. Send forth it takes after to subjects all. To body, mind, brave bliss of quiet spring. Great yogis knowing this resort to it, to quell the foe distraction at all times. I too, a yogi, practiced in this way. You too, who yearn for freedom, do the same. And wisdom, I sing suchness most profound. Path to extract samsara's very root. The source of excellence in scripture's praise. Most famous plans to lift confusion's gloom. The wise who yearn for freedom, knowing this, with every effort generate the path. I too, a yogi, practice in this way. You too, who yearn for freedom, do the same. One pointed concentration by itself. We don't see how can cut samsara's root, nor wisdom like in calm abiding path. Dispel the afflictions what's stored in my throat. So among the wisdom settling how things are, upon unwavering clam abiding steep. Why wisdom then probe well with its sharp sword of reasons made no way beyond extremes, destroy all objects of extremist views, and so make insight into suchness vast. I too, a yogi, practice in this way. You too, who yearn for freedom, do the same. With concentration from what need to say, one pointed focus plus discernment then precisely proves the concentration grows, that fixed and unwavering on the mode of being. Amazing who sing this strive to achieve, united, calm, abiding, and insight. I too, a yogi, practiced in this way. You too, who yearn for freedom, do the same. Praise those who hold faith in equipoise, the space like voidness and post meditation, the illusion light. By wisdom, generous method, and perfect, the conquered children, deeds of fortunate, sending the question, bending partial paths. I too, a yogi, practiced in this way. You too, who yearn for freedom, do the same. Supreme great vehicle, past cause and effect. Those need a common path that practice well. Save guidance from an expert pilot take, and sail the tantra at vast ocean door.
Heed all
The
that
faith
fit
advice make meaningful, the leisure and endowments you obtain. I too, a yogi practice in this way. You too, who in firm freedom do the same. In order to acquaint my mind with it, and serve those others with good fortune too. I have explained in plain and simple words the whole path pleasing to the conquerors. Pray all my greater spice virtue be, not parted from the excellent pure path. I too, a yogi, make prayers this way. You too, who yearn for freedom, make the same.
So have you got the sheet with mandala and refuge and bodhicitta on? If you have, this follows now. Mandala offering. Pajipake
Joshimabento Ramariraklingji Nidegen Pandi Sangye Jingdu Miltembulawai Dukunamandang Jingla Ceparasyo Sam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryatayami.
Refuge and bodhicitta. To Buddha, Dharma, and Fun Fellowship, I go for refuge till enlightenment. By my collections, giving, and the rest, may I reach Buddhahood for being's sake. To Buddha, Dharma, and Fine Fellowship, I go for refuge till enlightenment. By my collections, giving, and the rest, may I reach Buddhahood for all being's sake. To Buddha, Dharma, and Fine Fellowship, I go for refuge till enlightenment. By my collections, giving, and the rest, may I reach Buddhahood for all being's sake. Okay, thank you. And we finished with the final Lamrim prayer, so let's not forget that at the end of the second session. So that's our introduction, and as I said, we would have questions about 11:15, if you have any, but there's only 20 minutes to go before 11:15, so you may not have any questions by then, but maybe you've already come with questions, so you've got some ready even now. Very welcome. And then about 11:25 to 12, we'll have a sort of meditation. So that's the part of our first session. And then hopefully we have questions and meditation in the second session too, so keep the variety going. So, Song of the Stages. Song of the Stages of the Path. So what path? This is the path of Buddhahood. So if you are familiar with Tsongkhapa, he's written several presentations of the Lamrim path, and we call them, the graded stages of the path of enlightenment in Tibetan, the Lamrim path. And in fact, he wrote one that's in prose, which is 3 volumes long in English, a kind of very full and comprehensive and so profound presentation. So that you may be familiar with. I think it's called The Graded Stages of the Path to Enlightenment in English, published by Snowline, I think it is. So, in fact, just to point out that the first 5 verses here do occur in the sort of the prologue or the homage in that text as well. And I think there's a couple of verses in this preliminary bit, maybe verses 9 and 10, I can't remember, that actually occur at the end of that the Lamrim Chenmo, at the end of the Great Lamrim, in the closing verses. So there's a bit of a relationship between those 2 texts. But some of you may not know who Tsongkhapa is. Well, we haven't got time to say very much, but it's always good to say something about the author. So he was a great Tibetan, of course, 1357 to 1419, so placed in the Middle Ages. And he wrote this text at the Ganden Monastery. So Ganden Monastery was founded by him, or certainly by one of his disciples, and he stayed there several times. He was on the move, Tsongkhapa. He didn't just stay in one monastery, but Ganden was one of his places he did visit a few times, and it's very much kind of sort of headquarters of the movement of Buddhist practice that he sort of initiated in Tibet. He never claimed to be founding a new kind of a new sect or a new school of Tibetan Buddhism, but in fact that's what it became, and that's the Gelugpa school as it's known now. And if that name is not familiar to you, then at least the name of the Dalai Lama should be familiar to you. And the first Dalai Lama, Gendun Drub, he was a direct disciple of Tsongkhapa, and I think he was Tsongkhapa's nephew or something. I keep meaning to check that up, but I'm not quite sure. Anyway, he was a brilliant young scholar that was one of Tsongkhapa's close disciples. And he eventually, in retrospect, after his death, not immediately on the spot, but Gyewa Gendun Drub became, retrospectively given the title of the first Dalai Lama. So all the Dalai Lamas up to the present, it's a kind of, a string of very fortunate teachers that's kind of, began sort of under the training of Tsongkhapa. So you can see a tremendous influence on the life of Tibet, not just the religious life, which is of course what we are sort of most interested in, but also in the political life, in the sense the 5th Dalai Lama was appointed by kingmakers. I mean, the Mongols, I think it was, some Mongol group, they appointed the 5th Dalai Lama to be the ruler of Tibet, the secular ruler. So you can see what an enormous impact that Tsongkhapa had, even on the political, the secular life in Tibet. So he sort of, by the time Tsongkhapa came on the scene, all the Buddha's scriptures and everything, they were more or less all translated into Tibet. So that was kind of a hallmark, a landmark moment, shall we say, a landmark moment in the history of the arrival of Buddhism in Tibet. That eventually they got all the Buddha's scriptures and all the scriptures of those Indian masters, like who follow on from Buddha and sort of explain his teachings in very profound ways. So those are the masters belonging, particularly at least, to Nalanda Monastery. So you may have heard Tsongkhapa talking about the Nalanda tradition. So this is a sort of a kind of tradition of classic masters explaining the Buddha's teachings centered on Nalanda Monastery, not the one here in France, but the one in India. You may have been there, it's not far from Bodh. So all those having just been translated into Tibet, so that was the sort of time when somebody could come along in Tibet and really, sort of kind of set the sort of the wave of popularity of the Buddha's teachings, sort of giving it a big push, which is what he succeeded in doing. So perhaps not saying much more about that. There's written very many profound works. So this short verse presentation is just a little taste. And as I say, he's written about the Lamrim at length, but also many deep philosophical works about various aspects of the Buddha's sutra and tantric teachings. And you know, he, as I said in my talk about the Lamrim earlier, you know, he's sort of the person who sort of found the Lamrim style of teaching. Really, he found the Lamrim style of writing. He doesn't say that he invented it himself. He's giving all the credit to people who went before him. But he's, you know, that's very much how he's remembered, and many people following on from him. When they're trying to set out the Buddha's teachings for their own students, they use this Lamrim style of presentation. And that just means that, you know, you go through all the Buddha's teachings, not leaving anything out, but, you know, gathering all the essential points and, you know, putting them in this sort of graded outline or graded, you know, steps, so that everything is in a place, so that somebody who's starting at the beginning, you know, doesn't know much about Buddhism, can gradually, you know, follow the teachings step by step, and you know, get to the highest goal of enlightenment. If you read the Buddha's scriptures, you see there's the scriptures, so many different people, so many different times, and so many different sort of backgrounds, so many different kind of, you know, agendas. So the Buddha's teachings are very profuse, and some of them are very extensive, and they're all directed at different people for, you know, for different needs. So they don't, you know, just reading through the Buddha's scriptures doesn't immediately give you, you know, so your clear path of practice for yourself. So that's something that Tsongkhapa extracts from all those Buddha's teachings and presents it to us, and makes it all a little bit more simple in that sense. Right, well, let's just read a few verses while we have the introductory stage. We have the first 10 verses are kind of just a preliminary introduction, and those familiar with these style of text, there's always a homage. You know, who does the author bow down to? Who does the author sort of bow down and request the blessings of? You know, this sort of centers you. You know, where's this author coming from? You know, what's his background? What's his lineage? You know, what's his kind of affiliation? And, you know, where are we going to get our blessings from if we practice this path? So that's the first 5 verses. So before the Shakya Lord I bow my head. Your form from host of perfect virtues born, your speech fulfills the hopes of boundless beings. Your mind sees as they are all knowable. That's Shakyamuni Buddha, of course. So that's where we are. You know? So that's where we are kind of starting off from. Shakyamuni Buddha turns the wheel of Dharma for our era. So he gets enlightened under the Bodhi tree in you know, in Bihar, and the Ganges plain, southern bank of the Ganges plain, and you know, this from him Buddhism finally takes off. We talk about there being many Buddhas, you know, and talk about in Mahayana Buddhism. You know, there's many sort of influences to try to bless us and to encourage us to practice, and you know, awaken us to the highest wisdom. But Shakyamuni has this special place that he's the one who came to the earth and, you know, went through the challenge of teaching the people there. Somehow the time was right, and you know, it was successful in the sense that, you know, many people did follow his teachings, and his teachings have remained in a very much a living form to the present day. So that's kind of not just the scriptures, not just the written form is available for people to read, and for people to sort of make sense of in their written form, but there's the passing on of the realizations. You see, so realizations have not become extinct in people's minds. There's been master passing to master, and you know, realized students following in their master's footsteps. So you know, the deep kind of understanding that Buddha penetrated to is still also, you know, with us in this sort of living form. So that's sort of Shakyamuni Buddha we have to thank for all that. So when we take refuge, it's refuge first, in the first instance to him, for the most part. And then there's also praise in the next verse to Maitreya and Manjughosha. I vow to you, our peerless teachers, foremost spiritual sons, the task of all the conqueror's deeds assumed, who emanate in play of countless realms. So this is from the Mahayana point of view. You know, you might find other schools of Buddhism, when they portray the Buddha, they may discuss other names as being, you know, the Buddha's foremost disciples. But in the Mahayana kind of scriptures, the Mahayana teachings, Maitreya and Manjughosha. So what do they represent? Well, Maitreya is associated with the compassion and the love side of Buddha's teachings, and Manjughosha with the wisdom side. So we have these two, you know, streams of teaching, two streams of practice, or two streams of, you know, investigation. So on the love side and the wisdom side. So those are the two that, you know, we really need to practice and concentrate on. Those two branches of whatever knowledge, or branches of mental, you know, development or aspiration, if you want to follow the Buddhist teachings and get the most out of them. So Maitreya and Manjughosha, they certainly, you know, have a strong presence in the sense that Manjughosha became Tsongkhapa's sort of direct guru in a way, although Manjughosha is, you know, he's far away from walking the earth at the time of Tsongkhapa. You know, he's around at the time of Buddha Shakyamuni, but still, Tsongkhapa sort of manages to establish a direct sort of visionary connection with Manjughosha. So Manjughosha is very helpful to Tsongkhapa in directing him, you know, when he's probing to find the final, you know, ultimate view of emptiness and so forth. So Manjughosha is there guiding him, you know, just through his visionary appearances. And Maitreya, he was very significant too. But the person who had the most connection with him, you know, the actual living, you know, person who did walk on this earth, who had most connection with Maitreya, was Asanga. So that's an Indian master, not Tibetan. He's an ancient Indian, classic Indian master. So he had many sort of visions of Maitreya and was able to, you know, receive teachings from Maitreya, which are recorded and become very important texts in the study of Mahayana Buddhism in you know, in Tibetan terms, Maitreya's texts. So he actually, though not being many more present after the Buddha had passed away for very long, but still he has a way of communicating with highly advanced beings and giving them, you know, the teachings that they need. Although Maitreya himself, as you may know, he's supposed to be the second Buddha, sorry, the next Buddha after Shakyamuni Buddha. So he eventually comes down to the earth and turns the wheel of Dharma like Shakyamuni Buddha did. But that's not expected to be, you know, anytime soon. Meanwhile, we've had teachings from him through the medium of Asanga. So those are two sort of more kind of supernatural beings, let's say. But in verse number 3, we come more down to the earth, and we have Nagarjuna and Asanga. So these are actual beings who did live in India. Nagarjuna, 2nd to 3rd century Christian era, Common Era, and Asanga a bit later, 4th century Common Era. So they did kind of have an earthly presence, and they did become famous in their own day on earth as, you know, great teachers of Buddhism in those classical ancient Indian days. Nagarjuna, at Nagarjuna and Asanga's feet I bow, earth's ornaments, renowned throughout 3 worlds. You show just as it is the intention of the mother of the conquerors, hard to sound. Now the mother of the conquerors is the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras. So that's one bundle, you know, one collection of Buddha's sutras called the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, nicknamed, if you like, the mother of the conquerors. So these are the texts that the Tibetans kind of, you know, treasure most, really, out of all the Buddha's wide variety of sutras. These are the ones that the Tibetans found to be the most profound, or the most held the special meanings that they favored. So if you go to ordinary households in Tibet, or you know, in old Tibet anyway, and the places I've been in India, which are kind of followers of the Dalai Lama, you know, Indian provinces right on the borders with Tibet, like Ladakh, You go into the houses of people who've got a little bit of money, and on their altars they will have, you know, the collection of the Affections of Wisdom Sutra, 16 volumes, 18 volumes. I can't remember how many volumes there are. But so it's very much a kind of, you know, part of Tibetan culture to have these, volumes of the Affections of Wisdom Sutras kind of on your altar, blessing you. But to understand the meaning is a different matter, of course, you know, very deep, very profound. So that's when Nagarjuna and Sangha come in. Okay, now number 4, Atisha. So he is another Indian master, but if you remember, if you were listening to my teacher on, you know, the background, the Lamrim tradition, he's the one, or he's one of those masters who makes a long journey from the plains of you know, of the Ganges floodplain, where these famous Buddhist monasteries were, like Nalanda, and Atisha, he comes with Vikramashiva, so that's another great monastery like Nalanda, dedicated mostly to the study of Buddhist teachings and this Nalanda type tradition of debate and very you know, close reasoned investigation and debate and you know, practice. So Atisha was a great teacher in his own day in India, but eventually he accepted the invitation to go to Tibet, and he brings these teachings to Tibet. You see, Buddhism had arrived before he got there, and you know, had been there for a few centuries, but there'd been political upheaval, you know, and reverses of fortune, so Buddhism wasn't necessarily thriving in a pure form. But Atisha comes and really straightens things out, you know, revives a pure form of Buddhism and teaches people, indeed, you know, a graded path. So it's like Sankar is giving the credit to Atisha for teaching the Lamrim, you know, or sort of, let's say, inventing or, you know, assembling the teachings into this kind of graded path. So Atisha is very much the person who Sankar has in mind when he composes his own Lamrim text. He's the great Indian teacher who, out of great kindness, came to Tibet to you know, civilize these wild barbarians in the north. So his dates were 982 to 1054. So, you know, there's quite a few years. There's like 300 years have passed before, after Atisha had passed away, before Sankar was born. But Sankar also had the visions of Atisha when he's writing his Lamrim text. So he was very close to Atisha indeed. Okay, so then the final verse of this homage is, I bow to you, my teachers, with respect. I sing all endless scriptures moved by love. With skillful deeds, you show the fortunate. The best approach is leads to liberty. So there, Sankar was bowing down to his own living teachers there, the ones who actually blessed him, like, you know, guided him with how to you know, uncover the deep meanings of Buddhist teachings and how to develop the love and the compassion and the wisdom that we're talking about. So he bows down to them without giving any names there. He had many teachers, many gurus, because he studied so widely and traveled so widely around central Tibet, getting all the teachings he could, you know. So he's very, very broad-minded, very broad background of studies. Okay, so that's just some sort of lineage, some sort of sense that Sankar's teachings are kind of authentic and they're coming all the way down from the Buddha to all these lineage of this authentic masters. So he's teaching something which is, yeah, kind of genuine, not just something he's invented out of his own mind. So what it is this path that leads to liberty, freedom from suffering, or beyond that, the freedom, the path that leads to full enlightenment itself. So it's 11:15 now. Obviously, you know, to get through these verses, we can spend too long and go very slowly. But hopefully, we've got three. I'm imagining we've got three days of which to talk. So, you know, one next month and one in April. So let's hope we can get through everything. So I want to pause there in case anybody has questions. I don't want to talk all the time. People have got their own things they want to ask, and that's fine. You know, we want to have a sense of sharing. So if anybody has got a question, I don't know what to do. Do they get in touch with Jason, or they just unmute their microphone, or maybe nobody has got a question anyway?
I I think someone's raised their hand. Jennifer, please go ahead.
Hiya. I sometimes feel a bit confused about Maitreya, and I want to say Manjushri, but I think I've said that wrong, of what exactly they are. Are they gods? Are they people? I struggle with that a little bit.
Yes, well, I think it is a bit, it's fair enough that you should wonder. But in the sutras at Buddha's time, they were with Buddha. They were his disciples. So they were living beings at that time.
Okay.
Who were probably already advanced, maybe by the time, I don't know. They'd practiced with previous Buddhas or something. Anyway, they got to some advanced level of understanding already. But they did it very quickly when Buddha was teaching them. So they have, I think they have an earthly presence, but at the time of Buddha, you see, that they are, not necessarily, completely cut off from us, just through having, passed through death or in this earthly life. There's still bodhisattvas who are, working for the spread of Buddhism, but they're very advanced, so they don't have to just take birth as we do, without control, in a human body, whatever it is. They have a way of appearing to people who are advanced and ready for their sort of teachings, and so they can appear in more sort of mystic ways to beings. So they have a sort of mystic or sort of supernatural kind of presence also. So yeah, exactly who they are, it's different ways of looking at it. Are they Buddhas? Are they really just bodhisattvas? So it's you have to be a bit creative, I think, to see them in a way that can benefit you, get their blessing, get their inspiration. Even if we aren't clever enough to get or well trained enough to get their direct teaching, still we can get the inspiration from them in our prayers, as well as reading the text that other people have recorded.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
And there's a chance for a question. All happy, are you?
Yep.
Okay, well, that's all. We'll have a opportunity after the break too. When maybe we've said something more that might be give rise to need for interpretation. So we are coming at the stage of the path of enlightenment. So for many of us, that's a familiar topic, and I know. But for others, it may not be so kind of so familiar to them. So what does it mean to want to go to liberty? What does it mean to want to go to enlightenment? Yeah, so we are looking at ourselves in a sort of much more sort of vaster, broader way than we used to in our ordinary daily busy lives, where we're just thinking about what we can make out of this life in terms of looking after ourselves in very practical ways, of looking after our children and looking after families and so forth, old parents. Yeah, so we don't have much time to think about what lies beyond this life. So that's a spiritual trip, isn't it? That's a spiritual kind of dimension of life, where we start to look beyond this life. What happens after this life is over, if any? What happened before this life came into existence? So there's kind of that broader kind of that broader sort of perspective that we want to open up to if we want to take advantage of this teaching by Tsongkhapa. So many of us might have some doubts about whether we do go to somewhere else after this life. I don't know. This isn't a sort of a kind of a familiar part of Western culture. It is a Tsongkhapa's culture. Many people in Tsongkhapa's day probably they didn't know what to think because they were just simple peasants. working the land, living very close to the land, didn't have much education, weren't literate. So they didn't necessarily have a great conception of sort of a grand spiritual life. On the other hand, Buddhism was penetrating into Tibet and was becoming, part of Tibetan culture. So that in general, you see, if people did have a view, then it would be a view, that there was such a thing as future lives and a path to enlightenment and liberation. Whereas in our own culture, that's a little bit different, isn't it? There's a sense in which, probably, the majority, the majority sort of tendency is to think in much more material terms, isn't it? That, we're just our bodies and there isn't much more mind that survives the death of the body. And, there isn't much that's so special in life that is beyond the satisfaction that sense desires. So it's more of a materialist kind of approach to happiness, and scientific views which are trying to sort of penetrate to some idea of what is there kind of when we investigate, and they usually content just to investigate material phenomena and get all the answers from that. So that's how it is, and so we do have to shift our, lift up our view ourselves, maybe, to get out of that sort of, the sort of general tendency, or say propaganda, or the received view of our societies, when we're kind of, trying to follow a path or be inspired by a path such as John Carter's teaching. So yes, past and future lives, you have to think about that, and then that the mind isn't a material phenomenon. It's a phenomenon. It's changing moment by moment. It's kind of it's got its own processes. It's got its own cause and effects, but it's not made of matter. So it's something that will survive the death of the body. So our mind, yes, your body dies, but your mind goes on. And if we get, may need some reasoning to think about that. But there is plenty of evidence for it, And then karma is another sort of aspect of the way things are familiar to Buddhists. But again, if you are just born into this society that we were born into, it's not necessarily such an obvious and widely accepted kind of way of looking at things, is it? Not really understood. So past and future lives, non-material bodies, and the sort of the influence of karma. But I don't think we've got so much time just to talk about these things. Maybe in the second half of the hour, if people want to ask about those. There's many interesting things we can talk about, like our sort of near-death experiences that have have been quite well recorded now, and more of these near-death experiences because of the skills of our medical people. They can really pull people back from the brink, in ways that only happened less often in the past, I think, with sort of, sophisticated hospitals, then, something have a heart attack and it looks like they're dead, but, through intervention medically, they can be brought to life. So there is a lot of evidence from near-death experiences. And also, there's some serious research been done on people's memories of past lives too. I mean, I could say something about that. Maybe I will in the next hour, but maybe not just now, because we want to sort of cover some ground. Okay, so we're going to do a bit of meditation in a minute, but maybe we can just go through a couple more of these preliminary verses, just to keep moving. So I'm on to verse number 6 now. So we more or less down to, he's paid homage to these great masters of Buddhism who, inspired the great tradition, inspired the realizations that Tsongkhapa, being such a brilliant practitioner, student, scholar, and meditator, that he's really verified these teachings in his own personal experience. And then he's coming down to this the Lamrim kind of style of teaching, you see. So this is what he wants to present to us on this occasion. So where do those in particular come from? He says in number 6, of all earth's learned ones, crown ornaments, their fame a banner shining forth the beings. From Nagarjuna a Sangha, down in line, this graded path of Buddhahood has passed. So if you read the longer Lamrim text by Tsongkhapa, he's very often quoting from Nagarjuna and Asanga. So, look, I'm not making all this up. These great masters by Nagarjuna and Asanga have extracted from Buddha's sutras these important points. So I'm passing them on to you. So he's very much focusing on Nagarjuna and Asanga's works. And number 7, it yields all creatures wishes without fail. So this is the Lamrim, the Lamrim teaching, the Lamrim stages of the path instruction. So once you have that instruction, that's available to you in the book form, or especially valuable to have that spiritual master, spiritual guide, and explaining to you. Then it yields all creatures wishes without fail. A prized instruction like a powerful king, going beyond just mere worldly satisfaction, going beyond just getting some way of passing through this life fairly comfortably to your destiny, where you can go, this string of lives that you've had coming from beginningless time, and destined to continue in the future. And will it always be wrapped up with suffering? Will it always be wrapped up with confusion? Will always be wrapped up with this the energy of the new creature when they're born? But the sort of the kind of the fading away of sickness and death, or the sudden disaster of fatal injury. So our fluctuations between birth and death, sort of we don't seem to have much control over. So all these kind of our yearning for sort of a happiness that brings us beyond those things, a happiness that really takes us out of all suffering altogether. Well, why not? Why shouldn't we wish for that? So this is the teaching that will satisfy that wish. It yields all creatures wishes without fail, a prized instruction like a powerful king. Yeah, so that when you read the commentaries here, that powerful king is supposed to be kind of wish fulfilling jewel. That's one of those things in the Tibetan or Indian culture, what a magical jewel you can get. Like Aladdin's lamp, so if you rub that, you can get everything you want in material terms, in samsaric terms. But this is a prized instruction like one of those jewels. The jewel, the powerful king, is supposed to refer to wish fulfilling jewel, apparently. Collecting myriad streams of splendid texts, an ocean too of glorious eloquence. So this Lamrim teaching is not just like one branch of the Buddhist teaching, or one part of the Buddhist teaching that's being explained. It's like the whole trip, the whole thing, whatever you are, whether you can't even go to Buddhahood, but you're going to some lesser goal, like just near freedom from suffering, or just trying to, organize yourself so you don't commit so much bad karma. So you kind of, save yourself by purification and just making sure that the karma that you collect is virtuous karma, and then you have some sort of beneficial rebirth in the next life. You're born again as a human, or born somewhere in the more fortunate realms of existence, you see. So all these different teachings that Buddha gave, the Lamrim collects them into one sort of condensed presentation. So that's one of the Lamrim's sort of good qualities, you see. So it makes out of all these different streams of teaching, the very brings them all together into one ocean. Number 8, know all the scriptures as contradiction free, or scripture seers personal advice. The intention of the conqueror find with ease, safe from the chasm of the great mistake. Okay, so that's 4 great points about the Lamrim. I'm not going to dwell on them now, but if you read the longer Lamrim presentations in prose, you'll get a bit of explanation about what they are. So it's a way of Tsongkhapa insisting that everything is Buddha taught. There are no contradictions. Actually, it may look like there are different teachings for different people at different times, but they all kind of can be sort of made into one coherent whole. If there's any contradictions, they're just superficial, and actually when you investigate, they're not there. All the scripture says personal advice, so nothing's left out. Every teaching has a point. Every teaching has, something to say for you to practice, especially for a bodhisattva. You've got to be familiar with everybody's different styles of progress. You're the bodhisattva who's going to teach everybody, so you have to know all their paths, not just your own. The intention of the conqueror find with ease, so that's the beauty of the Lamrim. You can just really find what the conqueror is trying to teach you without too much puzzlement. It's all set out clearly for you. Safe from the chasm of a great mistake, so you don't make the mistake of rejecting some of the Buddha's teachings. No, that's not necessary. You know, that's just useful for me, or that's just somebody else. You know. It's how to bring all the Buddha's teachings into one coherent whole. So we'll stop there, and then we'll do a bit of meditation. So just get into meditation mode. I'll be back in a moment. Good. Now let's just do simple meditation. But that's part of the fun. Not listening to me just conceptual thinking, but just trying to go a little bit more into investigating your own mind and trying to get some inspiration, some sense of positive emotion, aspiration towards Buddhahood going. So let's just start by breathing meditation, shall we? So that's simplest form of meditation, in case you are new to meditation. So that means just finding a comfortable posture, which usually means having a straight back and keeping everywhere else in your body as far as possible kind of nice and relaxed. And then when you're in that kind of posture, then your mind can begin to relax. Now we just meditate on the breath. Probably most of you have done this before, so I'm not going to say very much. Just watch the breath going in and out of your body at the nostrils. And you're not trying to control the breath, you're just trying to follow it. And you're not following it with sort of, thinking about what's happening, just experiencing it as simple way as possible. Thoughts will arise, but when they do, that's fine. Then you can just bring your mind back to the breath and carry on as before. And try to just keep it there and let the mind come into balance, come into relaxation, not to be sleepy, be alert, fresh, experiencing things just without any judgment, just as they are, if you can. The Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, has passed away from this earth. His time of teaching here is over. But he's still very much, living being, and being fully perfect, complete Buddha, very interested in the welfare of everyone that he can help, especially those like us who are making an effort to feel ourselves in his presence and investigate his teachings. So his teachings are very much with us, and we have realized masters who have actualized the teachings, and realized masters who have actualized the teachings in the tradition of Taoism, which is where we are now. People such as the Dalai Lama, of course. So with the power of the teachings being here, and it's like the Buddha is with us, the teachings in their written form and their realized form. It's like the Buddha is still, still very much, here in a way. So it's perfectly, I think, perfectly sort of inspiring to imagine us being with the Buddha. So we can do that with a little visualization. We can imagine the Buddha and Asanga and Nagarjuna, and Maitreya and Geshe and Atisha, people mentioned, and Tsongkhapa. We can imagine the Buddha with this circle of disciples, sort of sitting in front of him or below him, just sort of looking out at us. And we're the audience. We are in different places, different countries, and we are experiencing different levels of confinement. So it's very difficult for us, some of us maybe, to go where we want to go and move around to different countries. So but we can imagine ourselves together. So we can imagine ourselves, we are the audience, we're the sort of junior disciples of the Buddha. So we are facing the Buddha and just visualizing ourselves in his presence and his followers, who are also at the Buddha level, or else they are, highly realized beings who are part of the Sangha. So then we've got three objects of refuge, actually, haven't we? We've got, the Buddha, then we've got his teachings, and then we've got the disciples who thoroughly realize those teachings and are progressing to Buddhahood, and they're the community, the fellowship, who can also help us. The ones who are alive today, we can get direct teachings. The ones who passed away have left their books behind, and still there's a sense that we can get their blessings because they're highly realized beings. They also have a way of inspiring blessings too. So we're in the presence of the three jewels. We can imagine some text there, if you like, as part of the visualization. Tables in front of the masters with their text that they've written, in beautiful volumes in front of them. That can help a bit to think of the Dharma aspect of the refuge. But the Dharma aspect of the refuge, it really is the realizations in the minds of the beings, whether it's the Buddha or it's highly realized advanced disciples who, for instance, realize selflessness or emptiness directly. So that's our sort of ultimate refuge. It's emptiness and the direct realization of it, because that is what really frees us from suffering. When we've generated that mind, we have the actual antidote to the ignorance which binds us in samsara. But this is what we definitely need to cultivate, so we can have a sense of these masters having attained that really advanced level of realization. Then that's Dharma refuge. So I imagine myself and this meeting between all of us meeting together and meeting in front of the Buddha and the disciples who are so advanced, to be our best teachers. I imagine it to be under a mild climate like India, and and maybe under the Bodhi tree, under the tree of enlightenment. But that's just a detail. You can visualize it in so many different ways according to your taste, of course. But the main thing is now we're taking refuge. So this means that we have to, shift away from our samsaric mindset. And we are asking the Buddhas for help. We're not making many, prayers of recitation or anything, but we're thinking about that. Samsara is our home, really. We are so attached to it. Life in these kinds of bodies, we don't know any different, really. It's hard not to think of it as just the way things are. This is all there is. This is our home. That's that. The Buddha is saying you don't have to think like that. You can turn away from this world of suffering, both gross and subtle. And we're very vulnerable. So it is a case we're born only and have to die. We're born only to have to experience sickness and suffering, various kinds of grief, dissatisfaction. We may achieve some comfort, some happiness. Just when we replenish our bodies with food, or we do things naturally that come to us, just being beings with a body like this. Yes, but those happinesses are temporary, and they have to pass away. And we see many creatures on this earth who don't have even, the suffering of their life far outweighs the happiness, it seems to us. The sort of people are born with mental illness, or people are born to be exploited and paid very low wages, or there's so much poverty. There aren't any jobs to be had, and all those creatures, and not just creatures, but whole species now, being pushed to extinction because the bossy humans are still taking over their land and planting their own crops and destroying the natural world. So that all the wild creatures are being edged out by domesticated, intensive farming, crop growing, and population of fish in the sea severely depleted because of intensive fishing efforts by humans and so forth. So that's just the animal world, and then we stretch our minds beyond that, the world of beyond our present tuning station. We're tuned into the human wavelength. So we see animals, we see other humans, we see this world that we're born in, we see a material universe. But if our mind is tuned to another radio station, then we might see the hell beings and creatures suffering in different ways, in different dimensions. After all, the universe is infinitely large, isn't it? So there's going to be creatures that are going to be suffering terribly. There's going to be creatures who are having very different experiences to ours. But they're all going through the round of birth and death. So whatever happiness they experience is just that short-lived type of happiness, just flung by karma, which doesn't sustain. Karma might fling us into, throw us into a fortunate situation. Terminates. And so any pleasure we have has to come to an end. So this is a world of around the suffering, around dissatisfaction. So we're taking refuge in the Buddha, saying, please help us, please show us. And the Buddha's offering us this path, graded steps on the path to enlightenment. So definitely we have an antidote here. So definitely we are taking refuge, not out of sheer helplessness, because we know that there is something to take refuge in, and that's the Buddha's wisdom. It's there waiting for us, to assimilate. So must make our own efforts. It isn't just going to pat us on the head and say, everything's all right now, you've taken refuge in me, so now here's your reward, eternal happiness. It's not like that. We have to work at it. We have to see where is our suffering coming from and what we can do about it. Put us laid out these lines of investigation and come to some very promising conclusions. And let us be inspired to follow those lines of practice. And then finally, for the last few minutes of our meditation, we also have to think of everybody else as well, right? All the other creatures in samsara. So as we take refuge and generate a bit of bodhicitta, so we must become enlightened for the sake of all those people. We're interested in everybody around us, all creatures, whether we are talking about the 6 realms of existence that the wheel of existence, the wheel of samsara is describing. However we want to picture it to ourselves, whatever being there is in the universe. We don't want to leave anybody out. Why should we? If there is happiness to be found, let's find it for everybody. So the last couple of minutes of meditation, just think like that. We must become completely perfect, fully enlightened Buddha, for the sake of all beings. So please, Buddha, the great teachers, please bless me, please bless all beings. Let us all find that path to highest enlightenment. So the Buddha and his followers are delighted, very pleased that we are aspiring to be the best that we can be in accordance with the wisdom teachings. So from them, from their hearts comes a blessing, comes inspiration, further energy comes from them to us, healing us, healing our sorrows, and pacifying our tendencies to be, get angry and to be carried away by just worldly passions, and purifying all the negative actions that we built up, the karmic imprints, which will only ripen in suffering. So purifying all our negativities of whatever kind, and inspiring us to, work even harder be the best that we can be, follow the teaching. A great sort of blessing of light, warmth, inspiration comes from Buddha and his disciples. So finally, the Buddhas themselves and the Bodhisattvas, they all dissolve into light. And then they just, absorb into our own minds, absorbed into our own bodies, absorbed into our hearts. And at that time, as we receive, that final blessing, we also send out, to all creatures, to all other beings. And we also send out, great rays of light, some sort of positive feeling, trying to reach out to the very ends of the universe and to all creatures there, giving them also a boost, a kind of a blessing, or kind of inspiration, comfort. We'll have to stop there now. That's time for a break. So we'll see you in half an hour. Okay.
Thanks, Geshe.
Thank you. See you soon.
Thank you, Geshe Graham.
Thank you, Geshe.